Hello and welcome to Articulate English, Film Techniques and Symbolisms in Billy Elliot. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I am currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I further acknowledge the traditional owners of the country in which you're on and pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. As we share our knowledge, teaching, learning, and research practices within the university, may we also pay our respects to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. Tonight's webinar is delivered in partnership with the discipline of English and Writing here at the University of Sydney, and it couldn't have been possible without Associate Professor Frances de Lauro and her willingness to share her expertise and insight on film analysis. We're very excited to cover this topic as part of our Articulate Talk series, particularly as it was requested directly from high schools, and we very much appreciate all your contribution and ideas in designing the talk. Frances, over to you.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank you everyone for your interest in this topic. In this talk, I plan to discuss the way filming techniques and symbolism are used in the film Billy Elliot in order to enhance the storyline. We'll look at the way close-up and long-angle shots are used, at visual rhetoric and sound, and the way these convey emotions or highlight the harsh reality of working class life. Confinement and coal mines stand in juxtaposition with the open space of the dance studio in this film. This allows graceful and liberating movements and symbolizes a life which will allow Billy to transcend the constraints of the life that he's living for the freedom and capacity of self-expression that a future in the world of ballet offers. We'll discuss motifs and metaphors that articulate concepts of rigidity, resilience, self-development, self-determination, freedom, and the coming of age. So I'll begin with the context. So this is set in County Durham in the north of England during the 1984 to 95 coal miners' strike. The context plays an important part in framing the film. The film is set during a time when there were major disruptions impacted because of political decisions. They impacted on the historical unfolding, on economic context, and on social life in that northern part of England. So combined historical, political, economic and social contexts. Why were the miners striking? They were striking due to a decision made by the Margaret Thatcher's government at the time, and it brought about the closure of collieries, and in turn there was widespread unemployment. Coal miners suffered harsh financial pressures and very difficult living conditions. So the setting serves as the backdrop for the film, and it also is a really sharp juxtaposition between the world that Billy Elliot dreams of and aims to be part of. And it is sort of a dream escape vision for him. So we'll move on to the next slide now as I start to look at analysis of the opening scene. So the opening scene of Billy Elliot is accompanied by diegetic sound. Non-diegetic sound is the sound that an audience can hear, but the characters in the film cannot hear. So one example of non-diegetic sound is that awful screeching sound in the film Psycho, where that is made by a violin, by the way, and that sound I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's pretty disturbing, and it's a sound that the characters in the film aren't hearing. It's only heard by the audience. Diegetic sound, to the contrary, comes from the vinyl in this case, we start the scene with the sound that's coming from the vinyl record that Billy has put on the record player. So even though there are sounds that he's not actually making, like he's not speaking or doing anything, the background sound of the music in this particular scene would have been heard by the character as well. So it is a diegetic sound. There is also the rhythmic nature of the music, which works well in accompaniment with the actions that you see, the movements that Billy's making. So I just want to mention that music forms a layer that accompanies the visual. So it augments the visual elements, it establishes predictability and consistency for the audience. So it has got an effect of adding some kind of order to what we're seeing. So music itself also influences the mood, understanding, interpretation of a scene or of a frame, much like visual elements. So it's not just what we see, it's what we're taking in through all of our senses. We do know also that scientific analyses have shown that music can have an impact on emotion and create happiness, sadness, or fear, or even terror, like the psycho example that I used. The lyrics deliver an additional dimension, which we'll discuss a little later on. So first we'll start with playing the opening scene. Thank you. So I'll start with what we see in this clip. So the visuals. And so bear with me as I talk you through what you've just seen. The scene begins with a frame showing Billy removing an LP, which is a long play record, from its cover and positioning it on the record player. After attempting to start a track, he raises the arm again and sets the needle on the correct track. His hand shakes a little, but it seems that he's doing a wavering action. So he sort of urges it along with his hand. Then we hear the song starting, and the song is Cosmic Dancer. The music and words were written by Mark Bolan, and it was performed in that iteration by T-Rex. We'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it starts with the sentence, "I was dancing when I was 12." So the frame, which is what you see inside the boundaries of the clip, shows that the background, the backdrop to the record player shows Billy jumping up and down. At first, we only see from his knees to his feet. Bit by bit, more of Billy is revealed, bouncing from his feet to his thighs, and then the frame shows the top of his head. We start to see parts of his upper body alternating between the top of his head and his feet. We see a close-up shot of Billy's face, the face of a boy in the frame. We see close-up shots of his body as he jumps up and down. And in the close-up of his face, we see a happy and carefree boy as he jumps. In the close-up of it seems as though he's emancipated. When he's up, his feet move in a running motion. His face is filled with joy, excitement, exhilaration. While he's up, his feet move in a running motion. We don't know at which point of this journey that is set, but we can just see a worry-free boy. And from his face in these close-ups, we don't get an insight into the political struggle or conflict that's surrounding the miners' strike situation. So as the music continues, we see his full body in a wider range shot. When he's up, he starts a running motion. He looks as though he's jogging. His arms are moving back and forward in sync with his legs. His mouth is open with delight. And while up in the air, he turns his body right around to run in the air in the opposite direction. There's a sense of agility and freedom, an indication of flexibility, coordination, and gymnastic grace. And it's not accidental that gymnastic grace comes to mind for me, because in the mise-en-scene, which is the actual scene that is put before us, or the mise-en-scène, he's dressed in gymnastic clothes or sports clothes that you see students wearing, and he's not dressed in anything that would associate what he's doing with dancing. And so it's one little flaw that I picked up, or one quibble that I have with the mise-en-scène in this particular beginning. The clothing might have been chosen because of the yellow and green, and I believe that it was, because of those colours being in the background and it working well together. And the yellow colour continues to be relevant and coordinate through the broader range shot after he stops jumping and bouncing up and down. So it's not the colours that are particularly jarring, it's the choice of clothing. And so clothing choice is part of what we see in the mise-en-scene. The arrangement and contents of the frame that we see, it's telling us something about the story. So in theatre, it's what's on the stage. You've heard the phrase, it sets the stage, and it does the same sort of thing in film. It sets us up to interpret, to understand, and to know what we're supposed to be experiencing in the film. So it's what you see in any given frame in a film. So these things set the mood, serve to embed audiences in a relationship with the mood that's being portrayed. And so many of the visual aspects come together to cement a sense of whatever the fear or happiness or whatever the actor or actors are conveying. The mise-en-scène is a visual strategy that imposes understanding on the audience. We're influenced by that, whether we choose to be or not. It can be thought of as a form of contrivance. If the stage were not set and the frame were empty, we would not know anything more than what the actor actually conveys to us. So to have those external elements put before us helps us to glean a lot about a situation, and then it's added to by the expressions, movements, and mannerisms of the actors and people in the scene. So I'll turn now from the visual to the other element, the oral. Oral is about what we hear. So we are, when we speak of oral, we're speaking of what is spoken, the manner in which communication is transmitted. It's orally transmitted. The oral relates to what we hear. So it does include speech, but it's sounds in general. So as the song and the film and the video progresses after the bouncing scene, we see Billy running from the room in which he's jumping into the kitchen, where he lifts 2 boiled eggs from a fry pan on the stove and places them in egg cups on a tray. Next, he catches a piece of toast as it pops out of the toaster, adds it to a plate and onto the tray. All the while, the song continues to play and we hear the lyrics, "Is it wrong to understand the fear that dwells inside a man?" Billy nudges the door with his head and sees that his gran is no longer in her room. Distressed, he runs back through the kitchen, dropping items on the tray and out the door. So the lyrics now are telling us, what's it like to be a loon? I liken it to a balloon. I dance myself out of the womb. I dance myself out of the womb. Billy races up the hill and sees his grandmother walking through long grass and goes to her. And it's in that scene that you see that the yellow singlet top works very well with the background colours. We see the tenderness with which he approaches and interacts with her. He taps her gently, he takes her by the hand, he reminds her that he is Billy. As the lyrics continue, is it strange to dance so soon? I dance myself into the tomb. Is it strange to dance so soon? I dance myself into the tomb. The lyrics to the song that's playing point us to the symbolism in the scene. The song speaks directly to the personality of the protagonist, Billy Elliot. It wasn't chosen by chance. Sure, the beat, the momentum, the rhythm, these things work really well in combination with the bouncing that we see. But they link us to the character as well. I was dancing when I was 12. Well, Billy Elliot is 11 at this point, so it's very close to his age. I was dancing when I was out. I danced myself right out of the womb. So we get the sense that dancing might have been an innate talent or something that is instilled inside of him, and he is trying to externalize that. It's as though it was there before he was born, as though he was dancing in the womb, in fact. So he dances himself right out. He continues dancing from the inside out, something he was born with. We can then connect the bouncing with the term bouncing baby, meaning a healthy and energetic baby, one with so much energy that he danced himself right out of the womb. The word bounce has another significance, one that we can look at briefly later. So it continues, I was dancing when I was 8. Is it strange to dance so late? And this is after we've heard, is it wrong to dance so soon? So the lyrics have a bit of a dark sense when he says, I dance myself right out of the gloom. So there's a sense that that the dancing is something that lifts him out of a state of being depressed or down. So I want to spend a little bit of time here on the importance of lyrics in the opening scene, because they represent something archetypal. They refer to dancing out of the room, dancing when I was 8, dancing myself out of gloom, dancing into the tomb, from the beginning of life in the womb to the end of life, and it is a play on the phrase from the cradle to the tomb. It's about the life's journey. It captures the psychological and emotional condition of the members of the Elliot family. The lyrics, is it wrong to understand the fear that dwells inside a man? And that is repeated, and it's possible that though Billy doesn't view himself as a man, the man is a reference to masculinity. So it speaks in a sense to Jackie, Billy's father. He's lost a partner, he's lost his wife, the mother of his children. He lives in fear of possible future loss, so of any threat to what's left of life for him. Billy too has lost his mother. He approaches puberty and adolescence at a time when he's encountered dancing, something that makes him feel free and makes him feel free of the gloominess. In the following morning's scene, we begin to see the signs of stress and harshness of the family's home life. It is quite difficult to watch sometimes. So before the film shifts to the industrial action in which Billy's father and brother are participating, we see a really hard life for the people in the Elliot family. It also becomes more apparent that Billy's identity is not bound to the same notions of masculinity as those held by his brother Tony and his father. He is readily and spontaneously able to fall into line with the ballet dancers in the boxing hall. So when he goes to deliver the key to Mrs. Wilkinson, he actually doesn't hesitate to join the line when there's a hint that he can do so. As his dancing lessons progress, we begin to see the joy and pride in Billy's face in many of the scenes. Before we move on to my next slide, let's watch a brief clip showing Billy's pride mounting as he realizes he not only loves to dance, but after quite some exercise and practice, he becomes quite good at it. So Billy is mastering the pirouette. He's become very good at that, and we see exhilaration. We see he's ecstatic. He's twirling around. He's sometimes in, almost in flight as he moves through so happily. But moments like that are short-lived for Billy. We see scenes that follow in which anger, fury, and shame are exhibited on his father's face. When he discovers Billy is attending dance classes instead of boxing and ballet dancing at that, his father tells Billy, boys don't do ballet. After his father's aggressive reaction at home, Billy races out of the door and up the hill to the tune and lyrics of the song Children of the Revolution. So Billy is part of a revolution that is taking place in which he is rebuking, I think, the inherent views of his father and brother on masculinity. He takes out his anger and frustration at the miners' strike poster that's along the road, and he punches into the air. So he's using his physicality to express his anger, to express his frustration at points at which he cannot dance because he's not free to dance. He's not feeling light enough to dance. So instead, his body is engaged in those angry reactions. When Sandra, Mrs. Wilkinson, Billy's dance teacher, comes to their home to tell his father about the missed audition in London, Billy faces the fury of his brother, who had spent the night in jail. He is belittled, insulted, and abused by his brother, who orders him to dance on the table. As Mrs. Wilkinson, Sandra, tells him to get down, his brother insists he stay on the table and dance. This creates an internalized conflict for Billy. Billy doesn't hold the same interpretations of masculinity as his father and brother, but isn't able to change their views. He again flees from the situation into a closed space which offers safe boundaries for him. For Billy, dance is another safe boundary. It's an outlet. It provides a safe space in which he can be free from judgment and negativity. Billy articulates in his own way what dancing means for him after the audition in London. It didn't go well, and he seems to sense that there's no hope of being accepted into the dance company or academy. As he stands up to follow his father, who is almost out of the door, one of the judges asks Billy to answer one last question. Can I ask you, Billy, what does it feel like when you're dancing? Dunno, said Billy. Sort of feels good. It's sort of stiff in that, but once I get going, then I forget everything and I sort of disappear. Like I feel or a change in me whole body, and like there's fire in my body. I'm just there, flying like a bird, like electricity. Yeah, like electricity. So the other judge says, "Have a safe journey home, Mr. Elliot. Good luck with the strike." And they leave. They go down the stairs. The father, this time following a fast-paced Billy. Billy finds it hard to articulate, but in broken sentences and phrases, he does so, telling the judges how it feels to dance, and he does so brilliantly. And so this brings us back to the idea of the bouncing. The bouncing is not only about the jumping up and down, it also stands for leaving, for bouncing out, to get out of here. So there's a term, "I'm bouncing out of here." Okay, so we can move to slide 5, and then I will discuss the narrative structure. The opening scene of the film hinted at what would be unveiled soon enough. The literary account is typical of a story about an exceptional child. The story belongs to the literary genre, Bildungsroman. This is a narrative structure that follows a child's moral and psychological development to adulthood. So it usually starts in about, the age that this film is set in, when Billy is 11. So it's a time where the exceptionalism of a person that ends up being an exceptional adult it first starts to become manifest. So we look at this as one of those sorts of stories, part of the genre of the Bildungsroman, in which we start off with an exceptional child that through the unfolding of the story works their way to adulthood, in which they are absolutely quite exceptional. So we will move to the closing scene when Billy is dancing in Swan Lake. So before we do, this is a realization of Billy's passion to dance. The hinted extraordinariness of Billy in the opening scene becomes a reality in the closing scene. It has a sort of parallel with the story of the ugly duckling. So it also has a parallel with the swan that becomes a beautiful swan in Swan Lake. So the Swan Lake is the kind of dance which Billy, grown-up Billy, is dancing in the final scene. Wow, that's never stops being an amazing scene, and a beautiful way for a movie to end. So we see in that that Billy has come sort of to the end of his narrative structure, that he has excelled at what he's very, very good at. So I thought I would end or frame this ending with juxtaposition, because there's so much of that in the Billy Elliot story. So juxtaposition is a technique in which contrasting ideas, people, environments, images, positions side by side to highlight the contrasts or to accentuate their differences. It's used to stimulate deeper thought and meaning in works of literature or art, and in advertising, you'll see it everywhere. This technique invites audiences to consider the interplay between opposing forces, encouraging a deeper exploration of the contrasts presented and their significance within the context of the work. So you see that the quote here, which is from the publication, The Link, poised atop the bull, which is an iconic and possibly ironic symbol of aggressive financial optimism and prosperity, The ballerina extends her arms, her leg, serenely posed against the grey skies. So the example shows the gentle, serene, agile, and sensitive ballet dancer juxtaposed with the robust, imposing, aggressive bull. It was an image used to publicize the encampment known as the Occupy movement, which began with the occupation of Wall Street in 2012. So that is, well, an image or a replica of the Wall Street bull. And that particular image was used very successfully to show the differences between the dominant aggressive bull and the delicacy of the individual, the individual with less power. So thank you for listening. We're a little bit early, a few minutes earlier than I had anticipated, but I think we can probably move on to the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you let me just quickly turn my camera on. Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation, Frances. It was wonderful. If everyone wants to start putting some questions in the Q&A function, that would be amazing. While we're waiting for that, Frances, some of the questions that we usually get from high school students and teachers is, where can they find some more resources relating to either Billy Elliot or film analysis more generally?
Yes, Joyce, I have some resources that I've picked out that I would like to share, and they are on film analysis in general. We use them in our, well, in my course, which studies documentary filmmaking, and it looks at the various aspects. And I think it's useful for really analysing any film. And it talks about the various shots, the techniques used, things like the diegetic and non-diegetic sound, mise-en-scène, and so forth. So I can make them available to you and you can pass them on.
Yes, thank you. Charlotte will quickly add the PDF in the chat, but I'll also send a copy to everyone who's registered with the recording, and also we'll add it on our webpage as well. Frances, some questions have started coming through. So the first one is from Josephine, and she's asking, what are other comparative shots or examples of juxtapositions in the film Billy Elliot?
Well, I think that the personality of Billy always stands in juxtaposition to that of his brother and father in the earlier part of the film. You know, you see that there is, well, I'm not saying he doesn't swear, but he doesn't speak, you know, unkindly to people, and he's not offensive and abusive in the way that we see definitely his brother being. So that is a juxtaposition in itself. So I think that is a really good example. I'm just looking at the second question. Do you know the purpose of the film was? If so, is it portrayed in the film? I think that the backdrop is the backdrop, and that's where it was set. But I have read and heard that the way life in that period, in that part of England, was depicted in this film is pretty much how it was. It was very true to what, you know, to the way that things were and the way that people lived, and the actual industrial action was received in a very unkind way. It was very brutal. The Prime Minister at the time spent something like 6 months preparing for the decisions that she'd made, which she knew there'd be an uproar about, preparing by recruiting enough police officers to manage the protests, and sort of really pulling the rug out from under the the men who went on strike, the men who were affected. That was a really potent contrast because they're miners working in coal mines, and you couldn't really get further away from the grace and subtlety and lightness and beauty of the dance and the ballet that Billy aspires to be part of. From an anonymous attendee, in the final scene or others, is there any explicit example of juxtaposition I can use to relate back to Billy's transformation as part of the Bildungsroman genre? Look, I mean, I guess that within, well, the Bildungsroman genre relates to the life of Billy, so the life of his character. He does have a very different life at the end of the film than he did at the beginning. We don't really know as much about his life, but we do know about his dancing and his ability to be a free dancer. You might have noticed that there were differences in the changes that caused by the changes to the father and the brother. The brother is excited, you know, really eager to be there. He's no longer deprecating the ballet and the dance. He's sort of really pressuring his dad to not be late. The dad seems a little bit in awe, a little bit overwhelmed, but in a good way. I think he's like measuring his reaction. He's keeping a measured reaction, very excited to ask for Billy to be told that his family's there. So those are two examples. It is almost covering Billy as a feminine figure, showing to be impactful and different for the time period, as men were supposed to be men's men and very masculine. Would that be correct? I don't believe so. I mean, there were always male ballet dancers, and in my sort of youth, and I mean, you know, up to the age of 20, I had a very good extended family contact that was married to a male ballet dancer, a famous one. And so there was nothing, you know, and you can actually see in the adult Billy, you know, broad shoulders. There's not a sort of fragile looking figure there. But it would have been very, very much different for the context. So probably not where he was living and not in the environment he lived in. My take on the appearances of the girl in the blue dress, whose only dialogue is by Billy. No, I really haven't thought that one through, but if anyone else has a thought on the girl in the blue dress, please do tap into the chat. What do I think Michael was supposed to represent with his relationship to Billy? What was the larger nuanced idea? Well, I think that he's also would have been seen as somebody that was whose choices and personality were inappropriate for the context. He would have been seen that way by the people that, you know, because he was dressed in girls' clothes, and so that would have been viewed that way. They were side by side, but I didn't feel that one relied heavily on the other. I just thought a natural friendship dealt with really well. Deeper purpose for Debbie's character, and how did she impact Billy? She was very much a person that straddled both worlds. She straddled the world, that the context that she was in the area that they lived in, and in the predominantly miner culture of miners, as well as the world of dance. But she didn't come across as a delicate figure. You know, she danced really well when they were dancing to a pop song, and, you know, obviously was an excellent dancer as well. But she wasn't such a subtle character. The impact of the absence of Billy's mother, huge impact on Billy, on the grandma. I'm not sure whether the grandmother was the father's mother or the mother's mother, but an impact on the mother as well, who was left, or the grandmother who was left as the only female in the house and not really able to be very influential or helpful. So Billy and Jackie and Tony are possibly the extra masculine toxicity. I don't like to use that term because it didn't really exist in the time that it didn't exist as a term in the time, or a definition in the time that we're talking about. But, you know, Tony seems so angry, and I think a lot of that is an effort on his own part to appear masculine. And that was what masculinity looked like. It's a pretty sad state. The blue dress have something to do with his mum, who was also in blue when we see her. Yes, possibly. I did notice in some scenes that there was a blue theme. He wears a blue singlet in one of the scenes, and I was wondering at the time about that same thing, whether the blue connected to his mother. So it could be that's pale blue. Yes, could be that's the case. I don't know if I've missed any questions because they've been fleeting past so quickly.
No, you've answered all of them, and thank you so much to everyone for submitting them. To stay up to date with any upcoming opportunities and events that we have, you can also sign up to our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Participate High School newsletter. This is where we advertise opportunities like this, and we also add learning resources along the way as well. So you can scan the QR code and fill in a very quick form for that one as well. Before you leave tonight, I just wanted to say that we do have an articulate writing skills workshop scheduled for tomorrow evening, and we would love to have you join us again for that one, as our academics will take you through any strategies to improve your approach to writing and argumentation. We also have 2 upcoming articulate talks in term 3, and that includes visual arts as well as community and family studies. So you can view more information and register by scanning the QR codes on the screen. On behalf of everyone in the team, I just wanted to say thank you so much for registering and for attending tonight. It's been a pleasure, and a massive thank you to Associate Professor Frances de Lauro for all her hard work in putting the presentation together, as well as to Charlotte for monitoring everything in the background. Thank you so much. We hope you have a wonderful night ahead, and we'll see you soon. Have a good night.